Peggle. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ferris64 with me, your host, Yemmy the Ferret. I hope you're all having a fantastic day today or a fantastic week. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving if you celebrate. If not, I hope you just had a good day anyway. I am coming to you from a very snowy, snow globe-esque day. Yeah. It's kind of like whiteout out there, it's a bit of a whiteout condition out there, so we're inside, we're snuggled up, Grab a bit of hot cocoa or tea if you so desire, and we will start off this episode with the monthly edition of what have I picked up this past month. Last time I said this past week and it was a month. This time I'm saying it right. What have I picked up this past month? I think the monthly rendition of this is a lot better because I have so much to go over instead of it being here's one or two games every episode. So we're going to start off with the beginning of the month, things that I picked up early in the month or things that I didn't show off last time because they came a little bit too late. This episode is I'm literally recording this on December 1st, so it is a new month, and we're starting off with Mario and Luigi Brothership. Mario and Brother. Of course, I've talked about this game a couple times on the podcast now. It's been a fun time. It just kind of like I said last week, I take a couple days off and then I don't get back to it for a little while. Same thing happened this week where I was playing it almost religiously. I think I'm about halfway through the game now, and I kind of stopped playing it, and I don't know why, but I haven't gotten back to it yet. I also talked about this game on the podcast a while ago, the Patrick Star video game. This was a pretty fun time. I mean, it's not a great game, but it is definitely a fun one. I love the disc, it being Patrick's tummy, and there's his belly button right there. But it was fun enough. It was fun enough, and I enjoyed my time with it. The game that I got alongside that, there was a 2-for-1 deal at the place that I was ordering these from. It might have been Amazon or VGP. I forget which one. But I also picked up Gory Cuddly Carnage physically. I have not opened this one up yet. But I played this game at PAX the last time I went. That was about 2 years ago now, maybe even 3. And it finally came out this past month. So I decided to pick up the physical version of that. Buy one, get one. There was a great deal on this next game on Amazon. This was $10. It was the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection Expanded Edition. That means that the extra bonus games that were added to it are on the disc physically, which is the way that I wanted it to be. There's how many games are on here? 140 games. So that's that. I've been waiting on this for quite some time because I was very interested in picking this up. But when they announced that they were giving you extra games through free DLC, I was oh, they're gonna re-release this again, and lo and behold, here it is, yellow box and all. So I will be checking that out eventually. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Game Collection Arcade Classics. I wanted to get the physical version of this, and I got the PS4 version. It came with a digital art book. If you get the Switch version, it also comes with the art book. There is a PS5 version. I don't remember why exactly I picked up the PS4 version, but I did anyway. At this point, I've played all the games on the collection, but I've only beaten one because I will be honest with you, I'm not really that good at the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting games or Capcom fighting games or Marvel fighting games, whichever one you want to call it. For some reason, I get to the last boss and I have no luck. But Wolverine is my go-to character for most of these games. The Punisher game on here, which I will be talking about in the next section, was pretty fun. I at least finished that. Next up, I have two games that I bought for Black Friday, one of them being Empire of Ants, which I did open. I have played a little bit of this. I'll talk about the next part of the show. The game disc is in my PlayStation, so that's why it's not in there. Empire of Ants. I was very interested in this one back when it first was announced, and now it's out, and I have thoughts. I also picked up for Black Friday Squirrel with a Gun. Both of them were $20, and I said, okay, let's go with it. Squirrel with a Gun. I have not opened this one, but this is probably one that I'll be opening in December to check out, especially if Empire Advance doesn't pan out. But I wanted to get this physically because it's very goofy, and it also includes some exclusive DLC, a sheet cover, a sticker sheet, and a poster. So, there you go. Squirrel with a Gun. Next up, this probably was actually my first pickup of November. It was Lego Horizon Adventures. I recently finished this, so I will be talking about it in detail in the next section. It came with a free outfit for Aloy, as you may or may not know. But there you go, Lego Horizon Adventures. Now we're going to move on to some games that I played on stream that I have physically. And throughout Bunger Month, we had a couple of fun things happen. We had a pretty good Bunger Month. It all started off with Iron Man Sarge's Heroes on the PS1. I have that physically. I played this game back in the day on... Oop, the disc is upside down. Oh, what the heck? There's an ad behind the disc. I played this back in the day on N64, so I do know that the N64 is a bit better. But I believe I picked this up back when I first got my PS1. There was a time where I just was like buying things up. I have, of course, back when you first move out of your parents' house, and this was one of the games that I bought. So it is a bit worse for wear. We also played Infamous Second Son. This was a replay for me. I did the 100% because it is a pretty fun 100%, all things considered. I have a knack for putting games in upside down, huh? There's that. The reversal cover is actually not too bad, but it is essentially the same thing as the regular cover. But Infamous Second Son, still worth playing if you haven't played it. We also played Injustice, Gods Among Us Ultimate Edition. This edition includes all the DLC on the disc, which is another thing that I would love to see about these kind of games. The disc is upside down. Yemmy, what are you doing? But I still really love Injustice 1. I think it's much better than Injustice 2. I like the story better. I like the character models better. There's some jankiness to it because it is like a first attempt at a game like this by NetherRealm, but I still enjoyed it. I thought that was pretty good. I also love the comic books. We also played Metal Arms, Glitch in the System. I did not like this game. We did not get past one stream for it. Maybe I'll give it another chance in the future. Unfortunately, my edition is not complete, and it's also in a generic box. I thought it was okay, but I was just kind of getting annoyed with it. Here's a game that we played and finished, Star Wars Starfighter. I thought this was pretty enjoyable. I'll be talking about it here at the next section, so keep your ears open for that. Star Wars Starfighter, Greatest Hits Edition. And to wrap up the games we streamed that I have physically, the Black Ops Combo Pack. I'm pretty sure I showed this off in an episode where I was doing weekly stuff, but I bought the Combo Pack because it came with both games. Ooh, I need to take the disc out of my PS3 before I put it in storage, but it came with both of the games, and unfortunately, this just fell out. And unfortunately, this did not include all the. It was not the complete edition of either game, so it does not include any of the DLC or anything like that. I was hoping for that, but yeah, I was kind of annoyed by that when I saw that. All right, I need to rearrange my stuff and move on to the next group of games that I have. All right, so all of this stuff are things that either I bought on eBay for like $10 or less, or they're games that I repurchased, or there's a group of games that I was gifted. First up, though, we have the PSVR adapter for the PS5. I got mine. I was talking about this a couple weeks ago, or maybe even last week, where you could talk to the representative on the PlayStation service, and they would send you a free one if you have a PSVR 1 and you want to play it on the PS5. So I decided to get that. First up, I have a few games here that I wasn't happy with the condition that they arrived in, but what are you gonna do? I picked up Iron Man Air Attack, and the jewel case is broken. Awesome, love that. But the game itself also not looking amazing, even though it looks okay in this light. If you turn it, it does have some scratches on it. But I wanted to pick this up because we played the demo on the PS1 version of Arm and Sarge's Heroes, and I was like, oh, it was pretty fun. I'll check that out. It was a 3-for-1 deal, though, so I had to buy 3 games from this guy, and all 3 games don't look that great. This one is Battle Stations. I wasn't sure exactly what this was, but it seemed like a strategy game. And if you don't recall, when I talked about, or when I played... Oh, the jewel case is broken on this one, too. The little fingers that hold the disc in place are broken. When I was playing Battle Stations, I was like, oh, is there a game that's like an RTS ship thing? And I believe that is it. So I checked it out on eBay and picked it up. The last game that I got from this seller, which I also wasn't too happy about, was the look of it was Championship Motocross 2001. I got these games for a 2-for-1 deal, and all of them were below $5. This one, the case arrived cracked, of course, which sucks, and the game disc is probably the worst one out of the lot, so I'm not too happy about the seller. I will not be going back to them, but they were cheap, so what are you going to do? I have a couple more PS1 games. Oh, how did this get here? Well, this is one that I streamed, Shrek Treasure Hunt. I streamed this one on the channel. I talked about it a little bit last week. It's a really bad collectathon mini-game collection. So that should have been in the last section. I apologize about that. What can you do now? The other PS1 games that I got were Nuclear Strike, right? Nuclear Strike, which is a sequel to Soviet Strike. So I do need to pick up Soviet Strike. The one reason that I picked this up was the game disc is awesome. I love the look of the game disc here. Not really much going on on the inside there, but I thought that this looked kind of fun. Helicopter game. And then this one was more of like a joke pickup, but yeah, I got Cyber Tiger, which is a golfing game featuring Tiger Woods, of course, as you probably already know. I thought that this was the goofiest shit I ever seen, so I decided to pick it up. Here are some other games that I picked up. We got this Terra Trilogy, 3 games in 1 collection. I thought that this was the worst looking cover I have ever seen. It's just so bad looking, and it was only, once again, it was one of those ones that's like $10. No, free shipping. I was like, okay. So I picked this up. I don't know why. It doesn't look that good, but whatever. This was one that I wanted to add back into my collection because I almost have all these games, which is Advanced Warfare, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I pretty much have all these games either physically or digitally. This was one of the ones that I was missing, so there you go. And then the rest of these games are games that I was gifted or we were gifted. And we also were gifted another Wii. I already have a Wii, so I'm not going to show off the Wii that I was given, but I will show off some of the games that the person gave to us. We got Frogger, Ancient Shadow. This one actually looks pretty fun. It's like a more advanced version of those Frogger games on the PS1, which I do enjoy. So that's one added in. The other was Finding Nemo, the video game, which I thought that I had, but obviously I have Shark Tale. So there you go, complete in box, very nice. We'll probably play this eventually, because I am a fan of Finding Nemo, and I do like my garbage movie games. And now comes the thing that everyone's been waiting for: Just Dance 1. Just Dance 1. Who let the dogs out? Damn, who let the dogs out on the Wii? So there you go. That was the first of many, because we also got Just Dance 2. All right. Woo, Rascal Flatts. Woo. Oh, we're missing the game disc. Must be inside the Wii. I would not recommend doing that. Just Dance 3. Woo, Just Dance 3. Well, who do we have on this one on the cover? California Girls by Katy Perry. Let's freaking go. There you go. The 3rd game in the series. And the 4th game in the series. We got Just Dance 4 with Flo Rida and Pink. And this one has a pretty funky disc. You know, they kind of went. They're kind of doing like the that's what I call music kind of vibe, where they change up the cases every time. And then we also got Rayman Raving Rabbids TV Party. I believe I had this back when I was a kid. I believe this is like a mini game collection, and I do remember having a Rabbids game back in the day. I don't know if it was this one. We'll find out. Also, Wii Carnival Games, which got a Switch release last year, I think it was. So this is a bit dated, but, you know, there it is. And then finally, the piece de la resistance is New Super Mario Bros. Wii with its classic red cover. And this case is a bit hefty because it comes with this giant freaking manual inside of it, which, I mean, it must just explain all the concepts of Mario Bros. Just in case you never knew what this was. So that's probably the biggest one in there for the pickups there. Looks like I need to clean it a little bit, but there we go. It's New Super Mario Bros. Wii. And that's pretty much it, except, which I'll be talking about this in the next section as well. On Black Friday, I picked up a PlayStation Portal. So I will be chatting about this and what I love and what I don't like about it in the next section, and it'll probably be the first thing that I talk about. So let's go ahead and jump into that first, let's go ahead and jump into that next section with what have I been playing, or what have I been playing on this past week. But first, let me clean up the area here. Okay, so yeah, let me talk about the PlayStation Portal here. I was a bit apprehensive to pick it up at first because there were some various people reviewing it and saying that there was some issues with it very early on. But I mean, we're about we are about a year out from this thing being launched now, and I think that it is in a good state where I think it is worth picking up because you don't exactly need like the best internet connection. You know, it's a little bit dirty. I apologize. I haven't cleaned it off since I last played it. So there were some issues with it when it first came out. One of the main issues was the lag between pressing a button on the controller and the action happening on the screen. So essentially, that's been fixed. I believe they put out a patch for that about halfway through its lifespan so far that has actually fixed that issue. Now, if you press X, the thing on screen jumps, or what the action happens pretty swiftly. It does not take any more time than if you were just playing on a regular connection, regular console, TV. So that's good. They fixed that. The other thing that I believe that they fixed was the speed of internet you need to stream. So instead of it needing to be like a gigabit internet, whatever, you can now stream on like high speed internet as well, which I do have. I have 200 up and down, so it seems to be working fine on my internet connection speed. Now, of course, if you have a slower internet like a 30 to a 40, I would say you probably would need to either upgrade your internet, or maybe you need to upgrade your router or whatever. But for me personally, just using the basic like Spectrum internet package that's like pretty high speed, it's working pretty well. The other thing that I really enjoy about this little system, and let me turn it on, is the startup screen. I love the startup screen. It hold on. It starts off with this little tiny, like, Doctor Strange-esque portal, and once it connects to your PlayStation, you kind of, like, zoom into it. You can hear my PlayStation turn on now, possibly, if the volume is loud enough. And then it should... boop-a-doop-a-doo. There it goes. And now, there it goes. It zooms right into my PlayStation, and now this is actually my PlayStation on here. So you did see me press on it before. This is a touch screen, so you can like touch things on it. I don't really use it too much because you know what needs it. But essentially, I am now using my PlayStation, and it's very responsive. I press right, it goes right. I press left, it goes left. And the only thing that was my like issue with this was if you are a person who has physical games in your collection, of course you need to have the disc in that you want to play in order to like go to your couch and play with the PlayStation Portal. So right now I have Empire of Ants in, and that's a physical disc. And if I wanted to play, let's say I did want to play like Marvel vs. Capcom, I would have to insert the disc to play it. I can't just play it because I don't own it digitally, which is of course like a duh thing, but it would be nice if I could just switch between them. I was joking with my friends and with my dad. I was like, remember those 6 CD players that you could put into your car, or there was even ones that you could just kind of have out, like the 8 disc player. I would love to have an attachment like that for my physical collection because I do kind of swap around between a couple games, physically at least, every so often. The games that I was testing this off with were the first thing I started off with was Lego Horizon Adventures. I wanted to start off with a first-party PlayStation game, one that wasn't really exactly built for the PlayStation Portal, but it did have like the Switch stuff to it. So I started playing that, and that ran fine. Ran fine, and I also the screen quality was amazing as well. The next game that I tried was the Hot Wheels game that we got for free on PlayStation Plus, Unleashed. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, Turbocharged, I guess it's called. And I started playing that because this is like a fast-paced racing game, and I had no issues with that. The only issue I had was the sound would sometimes make like a crackly sound a little bit. I think that's been an issue since this thing is released. I'm not sure if it's because it's focusing more on the visuals than the audio aspect, but it is something that I have noticed when playing games with a bit more going on. The last game that I tested on here was Empire of Ants, of course. I was playing that in bed. And, I mean, it's a pretty basic game for what it's worth, so it's not, like, super crazy. The other game that I was going to play on it was the Oddworld Soulstorm game, because, 1, I haven't finished that, 2, it's a puzzle game, and 3, it has pretty in-depth, like, the graphics are deep. Like, it's got multiple layers to it. So I wanted to see how it looked with the, like, multiple layers on a game. I haven't played that yet, though. I started back in the day, but I never got really too far. But yeah, I mean, it's very responsive. It works very well, and with the new beta for cloud streaming, I think that's going to be a big game changer. It might actually make me want to up my PlayStation subscription if I am playing on this more. At this point, I don't know how much I'll play on it, other than like when I just don't want to be sitting at my desk anymore. But as of right now, I think it works pretty well. It's not perfect, but it is kind of exactly what you kind of want from a system that's like this. And even though I still think that the PlayStation should do like its own thing for a console like the Vita or the PSP, there should be a handheld console like that that's separate from the PlayStation. I think this works just fine as it is. The only thing that you can't do is you can't go like on a road trip and not have an internet connection and play this. It just doesn't work. But I mean, in actuality, you could go to like a McDonald's, or you could go to a family member's house, or you could go to like have your car worked on and connect to the Wi-Fi at that place, and you could, in theory, stream your games from that connection. But it's definitely not going to be as solid as being here at your house and playing the games. Also, I have my PlayStation hooked up wired to my router, so it's getting the fastest connection that it possibly can. That probably also helps. I want to say that if you have like a Wi-Fi connected PlayStation and your router is upstairs and your PlayStation is downstairs, you could have a few issues there too. But I do have my stuff hardwired at my house for the most part. So that's one thing that I also would like to say. Like, yeah, I have my stuff hardwired, so it's probably why the connection is a bit stronger than maybe someone else's would be. In terms of like holding the console, it feels really good. It feels pretty sturdy. I wasn't like I didn't know if I was going to be a huge fan of how the joysticks felt being on this wide of a surface, but it feels fine. The only thing that you're kind of missing from this is, well, actually nothing, because you have your share button and you have the menu button. You have a mute mic option as well, which is automatically turned on, which I love. The PlayStation button is also moved. It's now in the corner here. You can't really see it because it's black on black. But it's one of those things. It just feels like a PlayStation controller. The only thing that I've noticed that has been a bit annoying is when there is adaptive trigger usage and there's some key feedback on the joystick. It can sometimes be, with how this thing holds, it can sometimes be a bit awkward or something like that to hold it and use the R2 or L2 buttons with those things on. Also, button mashing. When I button mash, when you're holding something like this, it's not as like I don't feel as good as if I was using a controller. There's also power button and volume buttons on the sides there. I accidentally started up started up Hot Wheels here. Let me get out of this so it's not making tons of noise. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it works pretty well. It looks great. Like the colors look good on here. This is my first time really using an OLED screen. Like even my Steam Deck is not the OLED version, or I never bought like the Switch OLED either. So in general, I would say like yeah, it's a very nice thing to use. I think the presentation is good, but the only thing is like yeah, it's not its own contained console. It does still need, for the most part, to be connected to your PlayStation. Two, you do still need a decent to adequate internet connection in order to use it properly, like I can, and also it's a little bit awkward to use at times because of the adaptive triggers on certain games where, because you're holding the whole console in your hand and looking at it, you just need to get used to that kind of feel. And so that's really the only things that I would say are the caveats here. Everything else has been great. It's got a nice UI. It's also got plenty of options in here as well. So, in general, I think it's great. How much will I be using it though? That's kind of the thing that I like. That's kind of the reason why I held off as well. Like, how much am I going to be using this thing? Like, what am I going to be using it for? And it's mostly going to be like, well, I just don't feel like sitting at my desk anymore, or I'm in bed and I just kind of want to, play something real quick. And it's probably going to be digital games that I would play on this because, like I said, physical games you got to swap them out anyway. So, and I have my PlayStation up here, so it's like, there's really no need to worry about that. But there you go. That is the PlayStation Portal. We'll boot that off here. And we'll talk about the next thing on our list here, which is Lego Horizon Adventures. So let me just put this down real quick, nice and safe, and I will get back to you in 1 second. Okay, so I've talked about Lego Horizon Adventures before, so I'll probably rehash a couple things from that, but if you want to go back in the podcast list and check out the Lego Horizon Adventures talk, first impressions talk, I would suggest doing that. Lego Horizon Adventures, let me restart that. As a person who generally enjoys Lego games, it's very bizarre to me how much is lacking from this Lego experience. I understand that they are using a new IP and they are under the thumb possibly of Sony and PlayStation for what they can and can't do with a Lego Horizon Adventures game. But this game really seems to me to be substance over anything else. Quality over substance. What I mean by that is the game looks amazing. It sounds amazing. The sound effects, the voice acting, it all sounds good. It plays well. It looks great. The Lego-ness of the game is out of this world. Everything is made of Lego. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. And I love that. I love that so much because there's so many Lego games that you play and it's like, oh, yeah, you're in the desert and there's a bunch of like desert things like pillars and trees and whatnot. But there's only like a couple bushes here and there that are able to be hit, or there's only like a fence or whatever that's made out of Lego and including your character. So that's one of the things that I love about this game is like, yes, the visuals are there. Like it's so high quality. Everything is just Lego. Everything from the clouds to the dirt underneath your feet, everything is Lego. And like I said before, like the sound mixing and the quality of the music and everything is all on point as well. There's no issues there. Obviously, the animations of the characters, I don't have any issues with that. It looks very movie-esque, like the Lego movie. It looks very Lego-esque. with the characters moving in very jittery motions, like someone was playing with them and repositioning them for every motion. And I think that that's great too. I think that's a really good quality of life thing. But my problems start here because if you're not playing with two people, you can only use one character at a time, and even if you were playing with two people, you cannot swap characters. This is not one of those Lego games where you have Varro with you, and you have Aloy, and you have Elrond, or whatever his name is. You can't use all the characters at the same time. You can only use one character for each player all the way through a level. You start off the level with the ability to choose who you want to play with, and there's one of 4 characters that you can choose, but once you go into the level, you're stuck with that character no matter what. And that's just really it's one of those Lego things that they've taken out, and I don't like that. The whole thing about the Lego games is switching between characters, unlocking new characters, and having the thing pop up, and it slides them into place, and that's missing entirely from this game. Also missing the progress bar for collecting studs. There is no reason to collect studs in this game unless you want to buy things in the hub world. Other than that, the studs are meaningless, and they're so meaningless that you don't even lose studs when you die anymore, whether it be falling off a platform or failing because of an enemy killing you. You do not lose studs anymore. It's very, very much like bare bones Lego at this point, and I'm not even halfway through my critiques of this game. Because the other thing is that there's really no puzzles in this game either. A lot of Lego games, they love to put in their puzzles, whether they be rehashed from other Lego games or completely new. They always love to put their puzzles in these games. And the most puzzly aspect of this game was finding a battery thing to throw at a charging unit and open a door. That was the most puzzly that this game ever got. It's mostly like an action platformer game. And even then, it's mostly like just walking around these beautiful environments, but not really doing much. As the game progresses, you do find more enemies to fight, but it's still like half the level is you just kind of walking through or platforming through an area. And there are some branching paths here or there. Like sometimes you can choose to, there's a tall neck, I'll go after the tall neck, or you can go the way of the way with enemies. So there are some branching paths later on. I really did not start seeing branching paths until the desert level started showing up, and then that's where I was like, okay, so here's the branching paths things they were talking about. But it was only in like 2 or 3 levels, and I was just kind of like, what are we like, really? The other thing about the game is there's like no collectibles. Obviously, there are things that you can find, like structures you need to build or studs inside of treasure chests, but they don't lead to an overall progression bar. Yes, there are things you can do in a level, like finding a gold brick or doing the tall neck mission, like I said, that'll give you something, but there's no mini kits to find, there's no little Easter eggs to find, there's no bonus characters or bonus areas to find. It's very straightforward. Which also leads me to my biggest gripe about the game is that every area you go into is segmented between fading to black. And what I mean by that is if you enter an area, it fades from black. And if you go to the next area, it fades out into black, and then you load in the new area and it fades out of black. And it's just one of those things where it's like, maybe this is for the Switch version, but we're playing on PS5. Could you not have made the 2 versions a little bit different so that we don't have to do this fade to black, come in from black kind of thing? I don't know. And some of the areas you go to are just so small. Like I feel like you go like 5 steps and then you're fading into black again and then you're fading out. It's so bizarre, especially for a PS5 game. Like this should be a PS5 game first and a Switch game second. So for a PS5 game to need so many loading screens, to need so many fade to blacks and fade ins from black, the fact that you can't start the mission and go through the entire mission and then backtrack through the level is bizarre, because in every other Lego game you have this entire section that you can go back and forth in. Like obviously there are some levels where it's like, oh, you're going up this tower and you can't load in the lower level. But a lot of Lego games, especially like the Indiana Jones and Star Wars games, like I remember going through the complete Star Wars saga, and you go through like the entire level, and it's like, oh, I missed a mini kit somewhere. Let me go back, and you go all the way back to the beginning of the level if you so desire. It lets you do that. In this game, you can't. It locks you off from going backwards. I mean, if we're doing fade to black kind of things, if I feel like you should be able to, fade the black and go back the other direction, but it won't let you. It's so bizarre. The things that they decide to do with this game just don't feel right. It just doesn't mesh. And that's like my biggest gripe with the game is like it detaches itself from being a Lego game, even though it has the Lego skin over it. And as I talked about last time I talked about this game, the Horizon voice actors putting on these like kiddie voices and these like fun adventurous voices, it doesn't feel right, because the Horizon series in general is a very serious and adult game series, and to have these voice actors come back and do like these goofy silly voices and make these jokes and stuff like that, I started skipping cutscenes and stuff because I was getting so annoyed by it. Even though the voice acting is good, like I said at the beginning of the game, like it's good for like if you're a kid and you haven't played the Horizon series at all, like yeah, it'll be fine. But for someone who has played all the games, including the VR game, it's just a real whiplash to hear these characters being voiced by the same voice actors doing these silly, goofy voices and having goofy things happen. It's so weird. Stack on top of that, once you get Elrond, or whatever his name is, Elrond, the guy with the hammer, okay? Once you get him, that's the only character you need. Because his hammer is so effective against everything, where Aloy's bow, it takes like 2 hits to kill something like a regular enemy, and you have to like really pinpoint your shots when fighting a robot. There's like this chicken lady. I believe she throws chicken bombs or whatever. I didn't use her at all. I didn't care. Also, Varl, I think his name is, or whatever. He has like a spear. Like that also works much like the bow, where you really have to be pinpoint accurate with your stuff. So using the guy with the hammer was like, I used him for the second like half of the game. Once I unlocked him, he was the only character I used because his hammer was so overpowered. It would literally, you would take one swing, you didn't have to be accurate at all, and you could break off most parts from the robots, which is a thing that they did carry over from Horizon. You break off the specific parts of the robot to do big damage. But when you're using a hammer like that and you can hit 3 parts at a time, you can start killing things in like 2 hits. It's kind of crazy. You also get these upgrades as you go along, so you can get like a flame hammer, a shock hammer, an earthquake hammer. You also have special abilities like a freeze effect that does like an area of effect freeze on enemies. There's also one that like you double jump and below you a big flame comes down. That's like the best one in the game. It kills almost anything in 2 hits. There's like a decoy that explodes when things start hitting it. There's a seeker missile you can shoot out. So they give you a lot of ways to counter anything that the robots have to send at you, but in the end, I felt like I was really only using the shock, like the frost wave ability, and the there was like a gravity bomb that was pretty good. So I just the whole thing felt very one note, which is not a good thing. Because every single level felt the same, even though the environments changed a little bit and the pathing changed a little bit. Everything really did feel the same. You go through a few areas with no enemies, and you're just collecting chests or whatever, getting studs, and then you go into an open area with enemies, and then you go to the next area and you walk around a little bit, and then maybe you'll have a dividing path, maybe not. Then you go to another area with enemies, and then you fight like a bit of a boss, and then you get the golden brick and you're done. And that's how every single level went. There was really no deviation. There was no level that went differently. Even the final level of the game, you start off going on a straight path, and you find a few treasure chests here or there. Then you defeat a group of enemies. Then you move on through another walking section, and then you fight the final boss. And once the final boss is done, you get the gold brick. it's just so copy paste, and it was so monotonous to go through with this entire game. And even though it only took me like 4 hours to get through, maybe not even, it was such a drag. And for a I love Lego games for the most part. There's only a couple Lego games that I really don't enjoy playing. And this one is being added to that small list of Lego games that I really didn't enjoy, which is really tough for me to say because it looks so good and the animations are so clean and crisp and there's so much going on visually, but everything else about the game is just so lacking. It's laughable. And I just really felt like I wasted my money on this. And I get it. It's for a younger audience. It's for a younger audience to get into the Horizon series. It's essentially an ad for the Horizon games. But I think that most people who are picking this game up are people who are just fans of Horizon. And to not make it at least a competent Lego game, it just seems odd to me. Because I think a lot of people who are playing this game are people like me who is like, oh, I like Horizon and I like Lego, so let's play the game. And you play the game and you're like, well, this is boring. And I dragged my feet getting through it, but I did end up finishing it in like a couple sittings, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, it's one of those games that I will not look back at fondly. Maybe I'll look back at it and say, oh wow, that Lego game looked great. That'll probably be it. Okay, let's also talk about Liar's Bar, which I picked up recently. This is an early access game where you play as some anthropomorphic animals in a bar setting, and you're playing either a card game or a dice game. And each of you has a revolver with one bullet in it. It's kind of like Russian roulette in that way, but instead of just spinning the gun in the middle of the table, if you call out someone for lying about what they put down, if they are lying, they either point the gun at themselves or you point the gun at them, and fate takes the wheel. So essentially, with the card version of the game, it's almost like Uno in a way, I guess. Well, I guess not really. Well, let me just explain it. So essentially, a card like kings are what you need to put down for this round. So you get some random cards, and let's say you have 2 kings, a couple queens, an ace. So what you need to do is strategize. Like, do I want to put down my correct cards now, or should I wait and put them down later? And that's kind of the whole strategy aspect of it. So you can lie the first round and say, oh, two kings. Of course I have 2 kings. And hopefully no one calls you out in the first round. Or you can go into the first round and say, oh, 1 king, and it's actually a king. And if someone calls you out, then they point the gun at themselves because they called you out when you weren't lying. And vice versa. If you are lying and they call you out, then you have to point the gun at yourself or they point the gun at you. So it's a bit of strategy there, obviously. I haven't won a round yet, which is why I haven't placed it into my completed games list. But it doesn't seem too bad to get a win in this one. My main problem with the game is it's all online. There's no way to play like offline or anything like that with like bots or anything, which I don't think would be as enjoyable either. But it is a very social game. People are talking through their mics. They have, they're moving their heads around and stuff like that. It's a very social game. And to me, like for me personally, if I'm not playing with my friends, I always find it a bit awkward to play with other people. Even when I played that Death Note game that I talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, I had to kind of warm up to talking to random people when they were questioning you, and I'm not like big on that type of thing. And the same thing here, where a lot of the custom lobbies that people set up, it's all like, oh, mic only, mic needs to be on, mic on or kick or something like that. And you go into and I have to look for the ones that don't have that, and the ones that don't have that obviously aren't going to be as much fun because people aren't like talking and commiserating with each other. So it's a very social game in that way, where you're talking with people and they're talking back to you, or you're typing to people. The main issue that I had was the card selection thing it's kind of weird. You have to like move the cursor with the buttons over the card that you want to play, and I always am so slow at that, and people just think that I'm lying every single time because I'm so slow at picking my cards. Maybe it's a skill issue, I don't know. The other game you can play is like a dice game. Essentially, you roll dice, and if you don't I guess you just lie to people depending on what dice you have. It's not as fun as the card game, of course, but it's there. It's fine. And the developers are actively updating this game. It recently got an update before I bought it, so they are actively updating it, and they'll probably bring it out of early access sometime next year. But as of right now, I mean, I bought it for like $5 on sale, and I've played a couple rounds, and I don't know how much more of this I'll play unless other people want to play with me. But even then, I feel like it's got a very short shelf life for me personally. And I think the main reason behind that is because so much of the game is that social aspect of talking to one another and doing things with one another. And I'm more so like, if I'm playing a game multiplayer, I got my mic off and I'm listening to music or I'm doing whatever. And of course, this is obviously it's kind of like playing Red Dead Redemption, where you want to have that rabble around you to kind of make it more lifelike in a way. But for me personally, I just don't really like games like this, where it's like, okay, so you have to like really talk to people, or you have to like really communicate with people, or the main theme of the game doesn't work. It's like Among Us in that way, where if you don't have a lobby full of people talking, it's much more difficult to ascertain who's the killer, and it's also a lot more difficult to defend yourself if you are, if people say that you're the killer and you're not. In the same way here, it's like, okay, it's if you're not talking and you have to type everything out, it's harder to defend yourself if someone is wondering if you're lying about what cards you put down. And of course, with the pace of the game too, it just sometimes catches me off guard. So yeah, all in all, right now, not like super crazy about it, but I'm sure there's lots of content that can come out of this one that would be fun. I'm sure there's people who are going to have a blast with this game, but already, like, going through like the server list when I was on yesterday, it's not a lot. I mean, there's like 10 or 15 servers available, and like I said, most of them are like, you need to have your mic on. It's like, I just don't want to have my mic on. Like, what, are we gonna have a full conversation? Like, oh, hey, how you doing? I hope you're doing good today. Oh, wonderful weather we're having. It's snowing outside. And finally, for the new games that I played this week, Empire of Ants. I've been playing this a little bit. Couple hours, I would say, and I'm not into it, which is unfortunate because I thought it was going to be such a fun, like, RTS kind of game where you lead your troops into battle and blah blah blah. But there's a little bit too much waiting in the game. The average time to spawn a unit is like 5 minutes, or 3 to 5 minutes. So you need to use resources to get them to spawn faster. And of course, you want to spawn them faster, but if you use your resources, then you can't build upgrades for your bases, your little anthills. So the core of the game is essentially build up your army and then attack or defend against the enemy bugs. And like the first major enemy in the game is like termites and these fire bugs, which aren't really too difficult to work around, but obviously, there's like a rock, paper, scissors aspect to the game as well, where workers can kill like the ranged units pretty easily. Ranged units can kill the warrior bugs pretty easily, and the warrior bugs can kill the worker units very easily. So there's like a bit of a rock, paper, scissors there. There's also like a support unit, or like a red unit that can just kind of be good against anything, which is of course kind of the one thing that I've been using. But the whole RTS aspect and like the build of your base aspect, it's not as good as I was hoping it was going to be. You don't really change up your strategy too much depending on anything. It's pretty much, for me personally, get one of each unit type, maybe get the ultra unit, and then just rock, paper, scissors it. If a unit shows up that's yellow, it's a warrior unit. Hit them with the range attacks. You can also send your warriors against their warriors. It's not like too bad there. This game almost reminds me of Brutal Legend in a way, because it kind of worked the same way, where some units were stronger against others. You were also leading the charge and being like a support character for your group as well. Same thing with Tooth and Tail, kind of the same thing there, where you're leading your units in the battle and you're giving them support and stuff like that. This game runs about the same way. You get upgrades for your ant character, and they can heal, or they can enrage, or they can defend, or whatever. Give your characters more shields. So all that is like fine to decent at least. Like it's nothing that I would maybe devote my life to, but it's certainly like fun here and there to play a couple rounds here and there. The part of the game that's not fun at all is these sections where you're like exploring an open area and doing platforming and like finding things. There's a couple missions here and there that you run across where it's like, kill X amount of fireflies, and the idea is you go through like this underground area and you're jumping onto fireflies and you're taking them out. And I like the platforming in the game is awful, like actually awful. Like you charge your jump and then jump. It is very inconsistent. The platforming in general just does not feel good. Controlling the ant itself does not feel good. Like obviously you're an ant, so you can climb anything, much like that character from Suicide Squad, Slipknot, the guy who can climb anything. Very cool character, one of my favorites in the DC universe. But yeah, so the ant, just like Slipknot, can climb anything. But the problem is that when you're climbing something, the controls change as you're climbing it. It's so weird. Like you get halfway up like the stem of a flower, and then all of a sudden up is now down. So you have to like take your finger off the joystick and re-evaluate what you're doing, which is just so bizarre. Same thing happens when you're like going upside down or you're going through a tube or whatever. Like sometimes all of a sudden the ant just decides like, okay, now we're going left for no reason. So yeah, it's just one of those things where the platforming and the general like running around is just not great. And the mission structure for anything that's not an RTS-like mode is just abysmal, just very not fun. Also, it's not as interactive as I was hoping it would be. Like the trailer showed, like going inside of the ant nest and doing stuff inside there and going around and outside. There's nothing to do outside of your anthill except talk to the mission givers. And if you go inside the anthill, you immediately get transported to the queen. So there's really no aspect of like going through an anthill either. I just feel like it just misses the mark there as well. The one thing that this game does pretty well is the graphics and the design. Like all the little bug characters are very well designed. I'm pretty creeped out by insects. Like I think I have insectophobia. So playing this game has been a bit itchy for me. Like anytime that there's a lot of ants around, I'll get like that little itch on the shoulder, like, oh god. There's also times where you're just like going through a tunnel and you look up and there's just like a fucking horse spider or whatever you want to call it, just staring down at you. Don't really like those moments. There's not many of them, but it is a bit of like a jump scare. It's like all of a sudden there's a spider right there. And of course they're very detailed character models. And yeah, I'm like kind of on the fence about this one right now. Like I don't think this one's going to be winning any awards this year, but it's an interesting concept that I feel like could and should have been fleshed out a bit more and maybe leaned more towards into the RTS nature. The other thing that was also throwing me off was the fact that the developer themselves or at least the trailers themselves were comparing this game to like Pikmin, where you gather your ants and you move your ants around. You have different ants for different things. And it's not really like that at all. And if this was more Pikmin-esque, I think that it would be a lot better, like commanding each color or different ant as they're walking around you, calling them to you, and then commanding them from there. But instead, you have to like click on them, choose them, then tell them where to go. They're never like following you. You kind of just tell them where to go, and they eventually get there. It's also it's a very slow paced game as well, which is just kind of like I wish there was like a fast forward button or something to get these ants to move into position faster, but that's just not how it works. So, yeah, as of this point, like, I wouldn't really recommend this one. Like, maybe if you're an RTS fan, you might be able to look past its flaws. But for me personally, like, I'm going to try and pick it up again. And if the second play time is not any more fun than the first play time, I'll probably just drop it and I'll probably play it on stream in like a couple years, That's kind of how it goes. But as of right now, Empire of Ants, not really recommending it right now. It's got some qualities that I like about it, but it's mostly just like an average RTS with pretty bad platforming. Okay, let's talk about the games that I either played offline or on stream. First up is The Punisher, which was a game that was in the Marvel vs. Capcom collection, the only game from the collection that I have completed so far. That's because this is a beat 'em up. It's a very retro beat 'em up. You play as the Punisher. You can pick up guns. You can pick up melee weapons. You can just beat the shit out of characters if you want to. The music was great. The sprite work was amazing. The combat was fun, but not like my favorite thing ever. And the boss fights were pretty good, but they did reuse a couple of them here and there, which is a little bit annoying for me. But for a side scrolling beat 'em up, I thought it was very well done. I enjoyed my time with it. You get unlimited continues, so that's a plus there as well. And if there's one game for the Marvel vs. Capcom collection that maybe you don't think of playing, this is probably going to be the one because this is the only one that's not like a fighting game. Like, yes, it's like a beat 'em up, but it's not like a fighting game like the other ones. So I would definitely recommend checking this out if you have the Marvel vs. Capcom collection. Maybe don't check it out first, but it's definitely a game that I would recommend checking out, and it only takes like an hour or so to get through. So I think that for that hour or so of game time, it was very fun. I had my fun with it. I thought it was good, and maybe you will too. Also, we played Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal. This was one of the last games we played for Bunger Month. It was a very fun time. For a Ratchet and Clank game that I never played, it definitely shot up to the top like 5 slot very quickly. It's probably like right now, I would probably put, just from my memory, I would probably put like Rift Apart at the top with Tools of Destruction, and then Up Your Arsenal, and then Ratchet and Clank from 2016, and then maybe Ratchet and Clank 2 at number 5 slot, or maybe even Cracking Time at the 5 slot. The problem is that I played the Ratchet and Clank series out of order. I played on stream and in general. So back in the day, I started with I think it was All for One was the first Ratchet and Clank game that I played on the PS3, and then 2016's Ratchet and Clank came around. I played that one, really enjoyed that. Rift Apart came around, played that one, really enjoyed that. On stream, a couple of years ago when I first started streaming on Twitch, we played A Crack in Time as the first Ratchet and Clank game for streaming, which was a terrible idea because not only was that not the first game in the series and not even the first game of the Future's timeline, but it was like the last game of the Future timeline. So I really screwed myself there. And then we played Into the Nexus, and I was like, oh, okay. Then we played Pirate Booty. And then we played Tools of Destruction. And then we went back to the Ratchet and Clank 1, 2, and 3. We're playing and we're playing them in order now. We also played the Ratchet Deadlocked game like after Tools of Destruction as well. So my playthrough of Ratchet and Clank has been all over the place. The nice thing though is Up Your Arsenal not only finishes some storylines from the first 2 games, but also kickstarts some things for the next, the future games, like the whole planet made of robots. Like there's a reason that there's a whole planet made up of robots is because in Up Your Arsenal, Dr. Nefarious, he turns an entire planet into robots. Like, it's one of those things that's like, okay, now I understand why this is a thing in the Ratchet and Clank universe. So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I wish that I played these games in order. But back when I was streaming, 5 or so years ago, I just wasn't really thinking about it. I was just like, oh, Ratchet and Clank game. And I just played it. And yeah, maybe I should go back through all the games in order now. Like, I just finished the 3rd one, which we've been playing these ones in order at least. But that would mean going back through Deadlocked, and that would mean going back through like Into the Nexus and Pirate Booty. Even though I liked Into the Nexus, it was very short. It really didn't have much going on. It was definitely one of those Ratchet and Clank games that they kind of just like threw together because they needed something that year. And eventually we'll get to like the spin-off ones like Full Frontal Assault and All for One. But until then, the next game on the Ratchet and Clank list, I think it is Full Frontal Assault, actually. That would be the next one on our list, so yeah, maybe we'll play it sooner rather than later. But as for Up Your Arsenal, love the game. I think it's one of the best Ratchet and Clank games. It's definitely better than the other 2 from the original trilogy. It definitely like towers over a lot of the future games as well. Like, even though I liked A Crack in Time and I enjoyed Into the Nexus, it definitely is better than those ones. I think it's better than the 2016 Ratchet and Clank, not better than Rift Apart, but of course Rift Apart is like the latest and greatest, so it's hard to like really compare the 2. But in terms of like comedy, story, etc., I thought Up Your Arsenal was great. The only thing that I didn't really like about the game was the mission selection. Essentially, you would go to a planet and you would kind of go through like a basic like, okay, here's the planet and here's where you need to go. And then you would go to a place and it would be like, okay, here's your first objective. And it was almost like playing the arena stuff where you select the first mission, then you have a cutscene and you back out and then you go to the main menu and it's like, okay, so now you pick part 2 and you go to that one. I just didn't like that idea. I mean, the missions were fine in themselves, but like the way you picked them just didn't really feel flowing to me. What I did really like about Up Your Arsenal was the arena. I thought the arena was fantastic, much better than the first 2 arenas that we played in the other games. It was so much fun to do all the arena stuff. There's also like these platforming challenges for the arena as well, which I really enjoyed. Also, the boss fights in the game were pretty good too. Besides from like the Captain Quark one, which is like the first one, so it's like I'm not gonna really put too much into that. The boss fights were pretty good. The final boss fight was not like rip your hair out difficult like in the second game, so that's what I also really like that too. That the Dr. Nefarious fight was challenging, but fair at least in the end. And most of the missions and stuff like that were good. Like I said, just the mission selection is just a bit weird for me in this one, so that's why it's not like a above like Tools of Destruction or Rift Apart. But I still really enjoyed it. So I think it would be like my number 3 Ratchet and Clank game at this point. Of course, I still need to play through more of them, but that's kind of where it's at. And once I'm done with all of them, I'll probably just kind of like order them and from my favorite to least favorite eventually down the road. But I think that those top 3 are kind of locked in place at this point. Maybe even top 4, because I really do enjoy the 2016 Ratchet and Clank. Even though a lot of people, they thought they changed too much and they took the comedy out, blah, blah, blah. I still really enjoyed that one. Maybe it's because it was like the first Ratchet and Clank game that I really dived into and played. I don't know. We'll see when I replay it in the future. Ended up giving that an S tier, by the way. S tier. Next up, Star Wars Starfighter. This is a PS2 game that was chosen during Bunger Month for me to play. And compared to like Battle for Naboo, which is like a kind of the same game almost, you're playing with a Naboo starfighter, and you're going through these like aerial assault, like firefights and or dogfights. I'm sorry, dogfights, and there's also like multiple objectives on the ground. It's Star Wars Starfighter is much more akin to the Rogue Squadron series than Battle for Naboo was, even though Battle for Naboo was on the N64. The thing about Battle for Naboo is it's like a fun little game to play, but it's a bit janky here and there, and I like the multiple like vehicles that you can use, but it's not like the greatest thing ever. But Star Wars Starfighter, I know it's got some average reviews for it. I really enjoyed my time with it. I thought that it was a pretty competent starship game. The control scheme was a little bit weird getting used to, but once I got used to it, I really enjoyed my time with it. I thought that this was the best version of the final battle for Naboo that we've played in any of these Episode 1 games. Essentially, the final mission is literally like, you go into space and you're shooting at the Trade Federation ball sack, and you gotta destroy the starfighters, and you gotta destroy the radar dishes. Then you go inside and you do like a firefight with the main antagonist of the game, and then you kind of you blow up the generator with Anakin, and then you fly out. I thought that it was a pretty good last level for the game, even though it was a bit more challenging. It was definitely like a difficulty spike right there, but I was able to get through it. Some silly mistakes here and there, some learning curve here and there, but I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was a really competent and really fun Star Wars spaceship game. Maybe Jedi Starfighter is better. I don't know. I haven't played that yet, but this one was definitely really fun. I liked the multiple vehicles. One was like the Naboo Starfighter, of course, which is much more like dogfighty. The other one was like this, which I didn't really like as much, but she didn't have a lot of missions to her. It was like this like recon vehicle, like you could shoot and these little like darts and tag enemies. But the bomber was where it was at. I really loved using that bomber. That thing was a fucking tank. Even though it didn't have recharging health like the Starfighter, it was still a really fun thing to use. Bombing all the different Trade Federation droids and stuff like that, protecting things. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So in the end, too, like the story was good. The music was, of course, Star Wars. So that's always going to be like top, high quality. John Williams knows how to cook, obviously. So yeah, in the end, I gave it a B tier. I thought it was really fun, and I enjoyed my time with it. And then the final game that we streamed for Bunger Month was Call of Duty Black Ops. This was a pretty good replay of the game. It's been quite some time since I played through the entire campaign, so we went back, played through it. I had fun with it. I thought it was really good. I gave it an A tier. It's definitely one of the better Call of Duty campaigns out there, really on par with the best of the best there. It's a bit stiff to play nowadays. The control scheme is just a bit stiff around the edges. The mission structure, though, is very fun. There's a lot of classic levels in this one. Obviously, this is like the start of like the really crazy, like almost final level type sequence that they've done in all the different Black Ops games with campaigns, you know. The voice acting is great. The characters are great. The story is good, even though it's got like a Fight Club-esque thing going on. It still is very good. I think the reveal is still pretty strong in the game. It does over-explain things a little bit too much at the end, but for the most part, I think that it's a very good Call of Duty game and one that's a must-play for anyone who is a fan of first-person shooters. And then finally, I played Donkey Kong Land 2. This one is one that just came out for the NSO service. I believe it was last Monday it came out. So I'm guessing that as I'm recording this, tomorrow will be Donkey Kong Land 3. At this point, I don't even know if I want to play it though, because Donkey Kong Land 2 was very bad. Or at least I would say it was not good. It was much more of a one-for-one demake of Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest. And they tried to do a one-for-one thing with that, and it just didn't work out at all. At least with Donkey Kong Land 1, it was its own thing. Like, even though it had ideas from Donkey Kong Country and some levels that were the same, it tried to do its own things. And with Donkey Kong Land 2, it really didn't do that. Maybe there's like a level or two here that was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But for the most part, it was really just like a straightforward trying to be a one-for-one copy of Donkey Kong Country. And Donkey Kong Country 2 is a great game. Donkey Kong Land 2 fails in comparison simply because it is trying to emulate what Donkey Kong Country 2 did, but just not as well and on a Game Boy. So when the games do their own thing, that's where it's like, okay, I can enjoy this. But when they don't, and they just try to be a one-for-one, then I can be a bit more critical because it just isn't working. It just didn't work out. So that's that. I think I ended up giving like a 2 out of 5, so not great. Okay, let's move on to what's in the news. All right, first up, Devolver Digital had their 15th annual Devolver Delayed Awards 2024. Of course, Devolver Digital loves to troll. They love to do a little bit of trolling, and this is the latest troll of a presentation. Obviously, it has like the glamour of an awards show, right? But they're revealing what games have been delayed from the various studios that are under their wing. So the 3 games that are delayed are Baby Steps, that's now being released in 2025. Skate Story, which was going to be released at the end of 2024, is now being pushed back to 2025. And Stick It to the Stick Man, which didn't have a release date, is now we're being told that it's going to be in 2025 as well. So it was a fun presentation. Like, Devolver Digital obviously goes all out for their goofy stuff. Like, they even had a fake category at the end for Volvy's Adventure DX. They're saying it's been delayed to 2025. Now, obviously it's not a real game, but maybe it is. But they had the creator of Inscription on screen for that one. He's like, oh, this isn't even my game. What is this? I don't even think this is a game, right? So that's just a very funny moment there. And I think that in terms of like, announcements for delaying a game, I think this works pretty well. These 3 games are definitely highly anticipated for a lot of people, especially Baby Steps, coming from the same creators as the very, very popular Getting Over It game, I believe. But yeah, that one is a pretty highly anticipated one. Skate Story looks pretty cool. It's like that like crystallized kind of glass looking effects to it. I think that's going to be a pretty cool game. Stick It to the Stickman. This is like a fighting game where you play as like a blue Stickman against the red Stickman, and it just looks very goofy, very wacky, looks like it's very physics-based as well.
And it's funny because they also were like, and here we honor the games that have been released. So they kind of do it like an in memoriam type thing. So Cricket Through the Ages, Pepper Grinder, Children of the Sun, and The Crush House, and Angerfoot were all like in that section where it's like, oh, here are the games that have been released. Oh, we missed them so much, and now they're out of the development realm. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun little showcase. If you want to check it out, it's on Devolver Digital's YouTube channel. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't really like there's nothing like too major here. I'm guessing that Baby Steps is like almost ready to go, but just not there yet. So we'll probably see that early 2025. For the rest of these, it's hard to say, but we'll see what happens in the future. All right, last week I talked about how Sony was going to, well, they sent a letter of intent to the owners of From Software called Kadokawa, that they were planning on buying the company. And Kadokawa has responded to that in a bit more detail. They essentially said that if Sony wants to buy Kadokawa, they have to buy the entire company. And if you don't know, Kadokawa not only owns some video game studios like From Software, but they also do stuff with comic books, anime, and board games. But like I said, the most notable thing is that they are the parent company of From Software, which obviously is a pretty big grab for Sony in general. So Kadokawa just wants to make sure like every aspect of their company is still intact, and every aspect of their company is still going to be pushing out things. People have speculated that Sony also wants to buy Kadokawa because they're trying to push more into the anime realm, which would make some sense to buy Kadokawa because they have anime studios. So that's, I guess, the rules of engagement is Kadokawa wants Sony to purchase the entire studio and not just like a certain aspect of the business. They want it to be a full package. So we'll see what happens. It's also been revealed that there are other publishers and studios that want to buy out them, such as Microsoft, Tencent, and Kakao Shuhei Kadokawa. Not sure what that one is. Tencent would be a giant L. Tencent is this company that makes a bunch of rip-off games, essentially. Microsoft, I mean, I cannot believe Microsoft has any more money after the Activision Blizzard buyout to buy out also Kadokawa. I also feel like that would definitely be blocked by multiple anti-monopoly laws, seen as Microsoft barely squeezed by with the latest one with the same laws. So I could not foresee them even getting close to buying this, but you never know. I think that out of all these places that I've talked about, I think PlayStation would be the best one to purchase Kadokawa, in my opinion. Yes, I would still like From Software to be on their own, but in terms of companies having relationships with each other, PlayStation has had such a good relationship with From Software for so long now. It's hard to be like, okay, well, why wouldn't they want to buy them? Because they've put out excellent games for the system, and they put out some exclusives for the system as well. And they've had a good track record with games. I believe From Software has had a game in the Game of the Year like contention like the past like 4 years now or something like that. Something crazy. Sekiro, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, and Armored Core 6, right? So they've had a pretty good track record with having games in the Game of the Year contest, or not contest, but the Game of the Year stuff. So we'll see what happens in the future, but as of right now, Kadokawa, that's their rules, that that Sony needs to buy the entire company, not just parts of the company. In other From Software news, Bloodborne is having server maintenance on the same day that people are predicting that a PlayStation announcement or state of play is going to be put out there, and that would be March 3rd. I'm sorry, not March, December 3rd. So people are speculating that there is going to be something big on that day because in a recent teaser for the PlayStation 30th anniversary, the date 12/3/2024 was kind of mixed in with it's kind of like one of those things at an airport that tells you the times of the flights. And Bloodborne is getting maintenance done on the same day, 12/3/2024. So people are speculating that either something new is going to happen with Bloodborne. Maybe it's going to be like the 60 FPS update that everyone has wanted. Maybe there'll be a remaster of the game, shadow dropping, or a remake. It's hard to say. In my opinion, it could just be coincidence, And once again, Bloodborne rumors kind of boil up and then fizzle out most of the time. But maybe there is some merit to this one. Maybe we're getting a PS5 native version. Maybe they're updating the game to have 60 FPS on the PS5. Maybe it's just nothing. We'll have to see what happens on the 3rd of December. Maybe there's nothing going to happen at all. Maybe they'll announce a state of play tomorrow, and they'll be like, eh. And of course, kind of like what Nintendo does, there will be no news of a Bloodborne remake. It's hard to say. It's hard to say until we actually see it. Like it's all rumors until something actually gets said by Sony, and it's hard to trust rumors because we've had so many rumors about this Bloodborne remake or remaster or whatever for so freaking long. So I think it would be nice to see Bloodborne get a PS5 version or even a remake or a remaster. I feel like the graphics have aged enough that it could use a bit of a refresh here and there. But then again, it is a bit of a style too. It's that gothic style. It's that, that generation from software style. And I would hate to see them like totally, completely redo them. But if just touched up here and there, maybe have something touched up, But we'll see. We'll see. If we do get a 60 FPS patch or a remake or remaster of the game, I would definitely pick that up. I love Bloodborne. It's a great experience. Unless you use like the bad weapons of the game like I have done for the past 2 playthroughs. I really struggled through that last one where we used the Kirk Hammer. I do not like the Kirk Hammer at all. But if you're using like the Saw Blade or the Threaded Cane or the Axe or any one of those, like the Great Swords, then you'll probably have a pretty good time. I guess we'll see what happens. The website that I'm looking at this from Push Square has the clown face over the Bloodborne character. It fits pretty well. Speaking of Souls-like games, though, Lies of P, the developer behind the game, has officially announced that yes, there is DLC coming. It's coming the first quarter of 2025, but they have not shared any more details about it. We got a few screenshots here and there, like there was like a sunken ship that Pinocchio was on and whatever, but no new information there. The big thing is that they confirmed that the team's next title is going to be a sci-fi survival horror game, and they're going to be building it in Unreal Engine 5. So this was translated from a website called NeoWiz. They say it is still too early to disclose the progress of the project, but the title is going to be a sci-fi horror survival game, one of the PC and console games that Round 8 Studio is preparing. So it seems like that would be a pretty cool thing, Dead Space-esque, I would guess, seen as it's a sci-fi survival horror game. But with how good Liza P was, it was obviously one of my top 5 games from last year. I can totally see them doing some really good work with like a survival horror game because Liza P has those horror elements in there wrapped around a Souls-like. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with a survival horror game in a sci-fi universe. Very interesting indeed. So we'll see more, or I guess we'll wait to hear more about that in the future. I'm guessing they're more so preparing that DLC right now for the first quarter of 2025. So we probably won't hear anything about this sci-fi game until maybe midway through the year or even later. So we'll see what happens. All right. A game called Light of Motiram has been teased, and a lot of people are drawing close comparisons to Horizon Zero Dawn. So this is coming from Tencent, Speak of the Devil. They announced a new open-world crafting-based survival game called Light of Motiram. And of course, it has many, many comparisons to Sony's Horizon Zero Dawn. Mainly the design of the robots themselves. The robots are very much like they got yellow tips and stuff like that, got some red in there, but they're very much white, like white-ish. There's like giant robots that are scattered everywhere that have been defeated in the past that are kind of like shaping the landscape, right? There's an evil faction of tribesmen who can control the robots. It's just so weird. Obviously there's like different ideas in here, so it's not just a ripoff, but for the most part, it seems very ripoff-esque. Like there's even like a horse kind of character, like a animal or robot that you can ride around in. It seems like the main difference here is that the character can use multiple weapons, not just like a bow and arrow. So there's like a hammer and a gun and a sword and stuff like that. So it's maybe more like a Monster Hunter X Horizon Zero Dawn type thing, but still, at the end of the day, it is very, very close to what you would what you would expect from a Horizon announcement, which is I mean, it's concerning. I would say it's concerning. There are some side-by-side comparisons of some of the monster designs, like the boar robot type in the game is very similar. The mammoth from Horizon Forbidden West and the mammoth from this game are very similar looking. Obviously, the one from this game looks a bit more mammothy, whereas the one from Horizon looks a bit more mummakilly, but you know. And then also they showed some comparison between like the tribes people that you'll meet in the open world. They definitely they got like that tribesman type thing with like the robot parts stripped that are on them. So I don't think there will be any legal action here, but Sony might have a case, but maybe not really. I mean, it's one of those things that's like, I don't know. I mean, Tencent do what Tencent do, you know. But I guess we'll wait to see more about this as the date for its release gets closer. Right now, we don't really have a release date, but whatever. So there's that. Let me know what you think, how similar these games look in the comments below. I'd like to hear your voice. Okay, a terminally ill fan of Borderlands was sent to Gearbox to play Borderlands 4 early. Now, we just got the announcement for Borderlands 4 in the, I don't know, what was it, last year? Or maybe not even last year. It was like earlier this year, right? Where they just kind of like showed the Psycho mask and they said, Borderlands 4 coming soon. So it's actually planned to be released sometime in 2025. So it is coming out soon, I suppose. But a person who was terminally ill was actually flown to Gearbox to play the game. And the person's name was Caleb McAlpine. He attempted a long shot, putting out what he described as a plea to Gearbox to allow him to play the still-in-development Borderlands 4. He suffers from stage 4 cancer and may have less than 2 years to live. And the people over at Gearbox granted him his wish, flying him out to play, I guess, an alpha version of Borderlands 4. Who knows how much he played or for how long, but he did get to play some form of the game at their headquarters. On Reddit, he recounted his adventure, saying that during his visit, he met two people from the development team as well as the studio founder, Randy Pitchford. He got to play the next Borderlands game. He also wrote a heartfelt message to the community and everyone at Gearbox who made his dream come true. He's quoted as saying, "It was amazing. I don't know if I'll be around when the game comes out, but I want to thank all of you for your love and support and for helping make this happen. It truly was an amazing experience and it was just awesome." So I'm sure that there was some sort of NDA he had to sign as well, much like the guy who was terminally ill and got to see Episode 1 early, Star Wars Episode 1 early. So it's very cool to see us Gearbox of all companies do this. Very cool to see that, and yeah, it's a bit of a sad story, but it's also a bit of an uplifting story, like just some humanity coming together to grant someone's wish for playing a game in a series that they love. And even though Borderlands 3 wasn't like, I know it was on my top 10 list the year that came out, but on replay and multiple playthroughs, and also just the problem with the bosses in that game, like even though Borderlands has kind of gone a bit in the wrong direction, in my opinion, they still have a chance to turn it around, because one dud in the Borderlands series is not enough to sink the series, in my opinion. It's just a bit of a bump in the road. I think the writing needs to be honed in a little bit, and I think the Vault Hunter aspect of it needs to come back to the forefront. But yeah, very cool of Gearbox, and we'll wait to hear more for Borderlands 4, which will probably be shown off more, I would say, during the Summer Games Fest this year, which is where the Borderlands 4 was originally teased. So we'll see what happens. All right, PlayStation executive Shuhei Yoshida is going to leave the company in January. He has been at PlayStation for 31 years. One of the first things that he worked on was the PS1, which is pretty crazy. He is not going to retire. He would like to stay in the industry as of right now. In a blog post on PlayStation's blog website, he said, "I've been with PlayStation from the beginning, and this is my 31st year with PlayStation. And when I hit 30 years, I am thinking, it may be about time to move on now. You know, the company's been doing great. I love PS5. I love the games that are coming out on the platform. And we have new generations of management who I respect and admire. I'm so excited for the future of PlayStation. So, you know, PlayStation is still really good. Is still in really good hands. I thought, okay, this is my time." So, pretty long tenure with PlayStation. He's been working for them since 1993. He worked on a game called Tales of Ken Tukange, which launched on PS1. In a post on his Twitter, he said, "When I joined Ken's team, my assignment was to talk to publishers and developers in Japan. So as a lead in account management, I made a phone call to many companies in Japan, publishers and developers from Hokkaido to Kyushu, and made an appointment and brought a group of people of executives, including Ken Kutagari himself, to visit the publisher and talk about PlayStation, hoping that they would make games on PlayStation." So, Tales of Ken Kunkanchi? I don't know. Maybe is it the Final Fantasy guy? I don't remember. Anyway, very, very interesting. Sad to see him go, of course, because he is a big figurehead in PlayStation at this point. I guess we'll see what happens next in his career. And finally, for the news today, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp's online service has officially ended. On the final day, Isabelle and the villagers said their goodbyes on the app as the servers closed down. So now the free-to-play game is no longer available to play, and now there is a new paid version of the game called Pocket Camp Complete that you can purchase now. In a post on Twitter, they said, "Online service for Animal Crossing Pocket Camp has ended. Thank you for playing. We hope to see you soon in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Complete." Which is about $20, which is kind of crazy. It was on sale for $9 if you purchased it before its release. So you still have a couple days. December 3rd is the day that it officially comes out. So if you want to check it out, or if you are a fan of Pocket Camp, you can get the new version of it for $10 until December 3rd. So if you want to check that out, there you go. I don't know how popular Pocket Camp was, but apparently it was popular enough to have a pretty strong following, enough people to be sad when it was being closed down. It is weird that they were replacing it with a paid version of the app. Obviously, they realized they weren't making enough money from Pocket Camp, which I don't even know if there was any money aspect to it in the first place. But there you go. All right, let's move on to the final part of the show, which is what's coming soon. Okay, Rift of the Necro Dancer is now officially launching on the 5th of February 2025, so it's coming in a couple months here. If you don't know, this is coming from the same people who did Crypt of the Necro Dancer and Cadence of Hyrule. Both of them rhythm games, top-down rhythm games, and now this new one, which was announced back in 2023, all the way back in 2023, is now coming out on the 5th of February 2025. Essentially, this is like a Guitar Hero type game where the notes, the enemies, come down the screen and you press the different buttons on the keyboard or your D-pad, or maybe buttons, I guess I would say, because the D-pad can't be pressed in the same place on two different sides. So it would be buttons that you press or spam or hold down. And it's a very much a rhythm game. There's also some other mini games in there as well with an overarching storyline. So I think it looks pretty good for the trailer. Obviously, there hasn't been a trailer for quite some time, but it does look pretty good. I have been interested in playing this, so we will officially see it unless there's another delay on the 5th of February. So very interesting to see what that is all about. In a more detailed post, they said Rift mode, a rhythmic battle against streams of monsters pouring out of a rift. Minigame mode, help Cadence overcome the challenges of the modern world of rhythmic minigames. Boss battle mode, defeat powerful bosses using 1-2 punch to the rhythm of the beat. A brand new soundtrack from Danny Baronowski and collaborators, also mod support, online leaderboards, and more. There is a demo available on the PC on Steam right now if you want to check that out. There you go. All right, Capcom's PlayStation Plus premium games are now available to purchase without the PlayStation Plus premium subscription. So Dino Crisis and Resident Evil Director's Cut can now be played without having to have that service, which is great. When Dino Crisis first came out, I was very excited to try it out for the $10, right? But no, you couldn't play it without the premium subscription. I'm glad I waited that out because I did not want to pay for the subscription service at that time. But you can now purchase both the titles for $10 each if you so desire. I think that this was a great idea because almost every other PlayStation game or classic game that's on the collection is purchasable separately, and now we have two very classic games getting the getting that subscription service out of there, and now you're able to purchase them. So very cool. I like that. I like that a lot. So if you want to check either of those games out, they're available for $10 each right now. Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2. It's finally coming to the Xbox soon. It's a holiday miracle. On their Twitter account, they said, "Brace yourselves for a holiday surprise. Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 is officially coming to Xbox on December 3rd, 2024. Mark your calendar and make sure it's on your gifts list if you're brave enough." So Help Wanted is the VR series for the game. Help Wanted 1 was much more akin to the original Five Nights at Freddy's. Help Wanted 2 is more akin to Security Breach. They have the characters and stuff from Security Breach. So this is not the VR version. I don't believe there is a VR version on Xbox. But this is like they call this the flat version, where it's you use the controller to control everything and everything like that. So there's various different things to do, like hitting the various characters on the head with a mallet, to doing Roxy's makeup. In the description, they said Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 is a sequel to the VR experience that brought new life to an iconic horror franchise. As a brand new Fazbear employee, you'll have to prove that you have what it takes to excel in all aspects of pizzeria management and maintenance. Like I said, this comes out December 3rd. If you want to check that out on Xbox, it's already available on the other platforms. A game called Moons of Darsalan is coming February 6th, the day after Rift of the Necrodancer. Essentially what this is a bit of a retro revival where you play as a space cadet or marine or whatever I call it, and you save various people, and then they follow along behind you as you go through the levels. So it's like a Lemmings type game where you call the people to you, you tell them to stop, you tell them to move somewhere, and your goal is to bring them to your ship and escape the planet. I was going to say island, but it's a planet. So you escape the planet, and you try to save as many as you can. The character models are very retro inspired, but there's also some pixel art versions of like old timey like sci-fi things, and there are some really nice pictures. If you pause the trailer at a few prime moments, some very nice pictures of some space cadet waifus. But the gameplay looks fun. It's a very retro-inspired game. It almost looks like an old like Genesis game, like an Earthworm Jim or something like that. Except you're using like these little space cadet characters. So it looks pretty cool. I posted the trailer in the Discord. People seem pretty interested in it. I am pretty interested in it. It is coming to all platforms on February 6th. PlayStation, Switch, Xbox. I don't see Steam on here, but I can only assume it's going to come to Steam. It's hard to say, though. So there you go. Power Rangers Rita's Rewind is getting a delay for the Switch. It's coming out on the 19th of December now, and the 10th of December is when it releases on Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam. So it's about a week or so of a delay there. It's due to some technical issues, so online play will not be available for a few weeks on Switch and Xbox platforms. However, the two-player online play will be supported for PlayStation and Steam at launch. In the blurb, they said, "We would like to blame Robo Rita for these issues, but we just need a little extra time to deliver on everyone's expectations, including our own. We'll continue to improve and enhance the game after launch and to make it what you and we want it to be. We wanted to update you as quickly as possible once the situation became clear. Thank you for your support and understanding." So what this one is like I think this is like an old school like beat 'em up style type game where you play as the Power Rangers against the various evil sorceress Rita and her various minions. It's very much set up like a TMNT game, or like I said, like a beat 'em up kind of game. So if you want to check that out, the other versions of the game will be available on the 10th, and the Switch version will be available on the 19th. Cat Quest 3, which recently, I guess it launched back in August. It got a new update, got a new content update, and it includes some stuff here. So the new update is coming soon to consoles. It is already available on Steam, but the new update includes 5 new quests, 4 new dungeons, and 9 new equipments, including a second Warrior's Braid for more co-op fun. There's some quality of life additions, including leveling up past maximum level, which now replenishes health, mana, and ammo. And also they added a camera shake on or off option in the options. They fixed some bugs as well with various stuff there. I'm not going to go into detail. But it is a pretty nice free update here. Some new quests, some new stuff to use. So if you've been playing Cat Quest 3 and you want some more Cat Quest in your life, there you go. Some new stuff for you in Cat Quest 3. Okay, here are your PlayStation Plus essential games for December. They've been announced a bit early because, as you know, the 30th anniversary is coming up, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be some pretty big things happening. So we have It Takes Two, Aliens, Dark Descent, and Temtem. All three of these games are, I guess two of the games are decent. I have not played Aliens Dark Descent. It's on Xbox Game Pass already, but I haven't played it yet. It Takes Two is a very fun co-op game. You need two people to play it. It was also the Game Awards Game of the Year that came out. I believe Temtem, I don't think it was on PS4, so now this is a PS5 version of the game. It's essentially Pokemon with cards. It's like a classic Pokemon with cards. So if you want to check that out, that'll be available on December 3rd. Also, they revealed some classic games for December early as well. These will be available on the 10th of December. We have Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, which was originally a PS2 game. Sly 2: Band of Thieves, and Sly 3: Honor Among Thieves. Both of them also were PS2 games originally, which is very cool. We got Sly Cooper 1 a while ago, and we were wondering if we were going to get the other two games, but here they are. Also, Jak and Daxter got that PSP game on the service as well, so it's like, okay, why isn't the original game on here? Well, there you go. Now it is on the service as well. Now, there was a re-release version on the PS4 that you could buy already, so it's not like it's something completely new, but it is something pretty cool. And also, Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy is one of my favorite games of all time. I've 100%ed it so many times at this point. I really love this one. So that would be the one that I would recommend. Sly 2 is pretty good. I have not played Sly 3 yet, but it is on my list. And we'll see what else they have in store for the 30th anniversary, which is on December 3rd. So we'll see what happens. Next week I'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure. Hopefully. And then here's something very bizarre. Nintendo randomly added 3 more Sega Genesis / Mega Drive games to the Switch Online expansion pack. It's been a while since we had anything Sega related on this service, and we got Toe Jam and Earl, Panic on Funkatron, Vector Man, and Wolf of the Battlefield Mercs. These are all available to play right now if you so desire. Toe Jam and Earl, it's like a side-scrolling platformer action game. Vector Man is also a side-scrolling platformer action game, kind of like a shoot-'em-up, I guess you could say. And then Wolf of the Battlefield Mercs is like a top-down shooting game. The Japanese version of the Nintendo Switch Online service also received the same 3 games on their side, so nothing different there. So if you want to check out any of those games, they are available right now if you so desire, if you want to check that out. And finally, Nintendo Music has added another soundtrack, and this time it's from the DS. So this is from Dr. Kawishima's Brain Training, How Old Is Your Brain? So here are the 14 tracks. You got the title theme, Checking Brain Age for the First Time. Menu theme, Start, Complete, Results. Brain Age, Very Tired. Brain Age, A Little Tired. Brain Age, Fit for Your Age. Brain Age, Fairly Young. Brain Age, Ideal Age. Checking Answers. Other Options. And staff credits are all available on the Nintendo Music app for your phone. So there you go. We'll see what else gets added to the service as the weeks go on, but this is a nice inclusion. I think the Brain Age soundtrack is kind of a classic one. I remember playing this back in the day on my DS. There's also another brain training game that was pretty popular. Recently got another rendition of it. I forget what it's called right now. Brain Academy, or something like that. That was also one that I used to play back in the day. But yeah, there we go. Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training. You can now listen to the soundtrack on Nintendo Music. Okay, well, that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening or watching if you're watching the YouTube channel version. If you could, put a like on the YouTube version, or if you are listening to this on the Spotify or podcast version, head over to the YouTube channel and maybe give it a like. I would appreciate that. Also, you can rate it on Spotify out of 5 stars and or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Let's go ahead and finish this off with the What's That Song? The Song of the Week. If you know the name of the song and the game that it came from, let me know in the comments below on YouTube, and I'll give you a heart and a congratulations if you get it right, or head over to the Discord link down below, and talk in the Ferret 64 section and say, hey, this is the song name and the game that's from, and I will give you a super reaction. And you also get the admiration of your peers. Let's listen to today's song right now. Okay, if you know the name of the song and the game that it came from, let me know down below or in the places that I told you. All right, folks, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I do this every week, so if you want to, make sure you hit the follow button and or subscribe. I also do another podcast called Film Freaks with a Z at the end, where we talk about movies. It's a bi-weekly podcast. They release on Fridays. The most recent episode is about Muppet Treasure Island. The next episode is going to be about Jingle All the Way, getting ready for Christmas time. If you want to check that out, that'll be available in 2 weeks. Also, I stream on Twitch Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. We finished up all the games that we could for Bunger Month, and we'll be moving on to a themed month, which is still being voted on by the Discord members. We'll see what that ends up being on Monday, next month, or the day that you may be listening to this, Monday. Also, I have a YouTube channel, Yemmy the Ferret VODs, where I archive all the old streams. If you want to check those out. I also do a football recap every week for the best games or the games that I have something to say about every week on the Football Ferret channel or the Ferret Football channel. If you want to check that out, we're on to week 12 now, which is pretty crazy. We've been doing this for, I've been doing it for about 9 weeks now, so I'm still kind of getting into the groove, I guess. But people seem to be enjoying it, so I'll keep doing it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the Thanksgiving Day games this week were kind of crazy, so I'm expecting to see even more crazy stuff on Sunday. Okay, once again, thank you for listening. I am the Ferret, and I am out of here. I'll talk at you next week. So long.
The Ferret 64 podcast is owned and edited by Yemmy the Ferret. Small sound clips used throughout the podcast were made by Yemmy the Ferret. The song in the intro and outro is Nightshade by Adhesive Wombat. The Ferret 64 logo was made by Player2P2. News sources include PushSquare.com, NintendoLife.com, and PureXbox.com. All opinions, video game related, are my own. Thank you for listening.